Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
James sent me notes. Steve, check out the story from the Detroit Free Press, a paper you delivered as a young man. Counterfeit automotive parts pour into the U.S. and can be a direct risk to safety. Doesn't surprise me one bit, and this is scary because pretty much any part of your vehicle can be counterfeited. A counterfeit part could cause performance issues or worse, be dangerous, maybe even fatal. So Bob Stewart, president of the Automotive Anti-Counterfeiting Council, says counterfeit parts are more than just a failure in quality. They are a direct risk to safety, where shortcuts in integrity can threaten lives. That group indicated it's not possible to know how many vehicles on the road contain counterfeit parts, but the increasing circulation of these parts is a growing concern among federal officials and automakers. The Department of Transportation's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration issued a safety advisory notice a couple months ago to the public, repair professionals, and used car buyers and owners about the rise in counterfeit and substandard safety devices, such as airbags. It indicated that counterfeit parts may contain unapproved explosive charges and construction material and can cause serious injury or even death in an accident. The director of the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center said in a September news release that the rise in counterfeit automotive parts and equipment continue to be an alarming upward trend. U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized more than 211,000 counterfeit automotive parts in fiscal 2024, nearly doubling the number of counterfeit parts seized the previous year. That included more than 490 counterfeit airbags. Said Homeland Security had about 40 open investigations into counterfeit automotive parts also. In fiscal 2023, the ICE release added federal authorities seized about 20,000 shipments containing goods that violated intellectual property rights, equating to nearly 23 million counterfeit items. Now, not all of those are automotive. Maybe 100,000 of them were, but that's still a lot. We truly believe the numbers are greater than what they report because they only know what they see, said the man who is the global brand protection manager at General Motors. This is an illicit trade, so by nature it's in the black market, so you really don't know what you're up against. The Anti-Counterfeiting Council's website indicates that counterfeit auto parts entering the U.S. have an estimated value of more than $3 billion a year, according to findings from the U.S. Department of Commerce. In July, NHTSA urged used vehicle buyers and owners to be aware of cheap, substandard replacement airbag inflators that can cause death or serious injury in a crash. And of course, the problem with airbags, you recall, Takata was involved in that huge recall that was going to have to replace 67 million airbags. And so with all that work being done, as you can imagine, counterfeits have flooded that field also. In the last year, according to NHTSA, 3 people were killed, 2 others suffered life-altering, disfiguring injuries because of faulty replacement airbag inflators, and that's the problem. Carfax data released the same month indicated that nearly 2 million vehicles were on the road after they were involved in a crash where an airbag deployed during the last 2 years. Each of those vehicles represents an opportunity for a scammer to install a counterfeit airbag as a replacement. Airbags, of course, are attractive to the counterfeiters because, generally speaking, the average person can't see it and know what to look for when they get in their car to determine if their airbag is counterfeit or not. And so it's the kind of thing that's out of sight, out of mind, and many people, of course, will never see their airbag inflate. So how would they ever know? Instances of counterfeit airbags are believed to be rare, according to the release, but NHTSA and law enforcement said there was no way to know how many are out there. 38 states have counterfeit airbag laws, but of course, what good does that do? So, believe it or not, in Michigan, a man from Macomb County was arraigned in April, accused by the Michigan Attorney General's office of selling counterfeit restraint systems on eBay, including airbags. He's 31 years old, out of New Baltimore, facing 9 felony charges related to counterfeit automotive parts, with a July probable cause conference set in 37th District Court in Warren. His attorney did not return messages seeking comment. Been in that court many times. A warrant charged the man with offering to deliver, display, advertise, or possess with intent to deliver counterfeit parts from a half dozen automakers in crimes back in February. The counterfeit items listed in the warrant are Stellantis grills, bumpers and logos, Chevrolet and Ford bumpers, and GM, Honda, Subaru, and Chevrolet airbags bearing or identified by counterfeit marks. More than $600,000 was seized from bank accounts associated with him in the first set of charges brought by the AG's office, newly expanded Auto Fraud Task Force. So the story goes on, but it doesn't surprise me. And, in the old days, we used to complain most about used parts or substandard parts, junkyard parts. And so you get a brand new car, you've got it 6 months, you're in an accident, you're going to crash, and your car gets damaged, you take it to the dealership, and they're going to repair it under insurance, and you discover that they went to a junkyard and got parts. And you're like, wait a second, don't I get new parts? And it depends on what your insurance contract says and so on, but the point is that used to be the big concern. Now the concern, of course, is that there's somebody out there who goes, wait, these parts retail for that much money, I bet I can make them for less. And next thing you know, there's some factory someplace making these things and shipping them into the U.S., and they're being bought over here and sold on the black market. And this reminds me of a story years and years and years ago. And I'm not sure if I've ever told this one before or not. But I knew somebody who worked at one of the major auto manufacturers, one of the big three in Michigan. I'm referring, of course, to GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Those are my big three. And that's what we called it for many, many years in Michigan, the big three. And I knew somebody who worked at one of those companies who gave me a tour of one of their facilities where they made engine parts. And one of the engine parts being made at that facility was camshafts. Camshafts. And somebody had the job at the very, very end to check using specialized tools how these camshafts had been finished. And if they were finished improperly, they'd be marked and sent for scrap. And somewhere down the line, after they'd been doing this for a while, they started getting word back, and this took a long time for someone to unravel. But people were apparently pulling those camshafts out of the scrap pile, sneaking them off the premises, and instead of trying to get the scrap value out of them, which wouldn't have been that much, because it wasn't exactly, extreme. This wasn't gold, okay? It was just some other kind of less expensive metal. Somebody was taking those camshafts and saying, hey, these are good camshafts that we stole from that plant. Not these are the defective ones scrapped from that plant. And so people would buy these camshafts substantially less than they would cost wholesale if you bought them from the manufacturer. And so somebody comes in with a bad camshaft needing some kind of work that involves a camshaft, and this defective camshaft gets put in their car, and then later on down the road, the car is running badly, and it comes back in, they go, yeah, you got a bad camshaft. What? I got a bad, how'd that happen? And it happened enough where somebody figured that out. And what's crazy about stories like that to me is, who figured that out? Somebody actually figured it out. And they said, wait, we got a bunch of bad camshafts, but they weren't installed originally in the cars. They were replacement camshafts. And the replacement camshafts would have come from the same line, but when they checked the tolerances on them, they go, these things shouldn't have passed. And they figured it out. It was not that the person doing their job was passing these when they shouldn't have been, because apparently later on, to prove the point, I believe they marked some in some way that they could track. But anyways, they later came back and said, yes, definitively we can show that somebody was taking the camshafts that had been marked for scrap and introducing them back into the stream of commerce and winding up back in our cars. And so think about the damage that does to your goodwill when someone buys one of your cars, the camshaft goes bad, it gets replaced with another bad camshaft. Now you're starting to think, wow, these guys can't make camshafts. Now, that doesn't explain the first one, but it does explain the second one. So that's the kind of thing that happens. But all of this stuff can be out there. And so the weird part is that if you take your vehicle into a shop to be repaired, let's suppose you're in a major collision, a lot of front end damage, and 2 airbags deployed. And so they take your vehicle, they straighten out, replace a bunch of body parts, repaint a bunch of stuff, and they replace 2 airbags. When you get back in your car, you just go, oh, I assume they did the work right. Insurance paid for it, car runs fine. Again, how do you know about the airbags? How do you know? And that's one of the reasons those are so attractive. So you really need to crack down on this. When they catch people, they need to do something about it, because is a counterfeit bumper going to hurt you all that much? It might, if it's built substandard compared to the actual bumper. Yes, that could hurt you depending on what happens. But the airbag, not being up to snuff might be a problem. And if you don't ever have to use it, you might never know. But the fact of the matter is that when you do need it, it's extremely important that it be appropriate. And so if it's not, then you got a serious problem. So crazy story, but it's happening, but they're working on it. I hope they work harder on it. James, thanks for sending that from the Detroit Free Press. The paper I delivered as a young man in the suburbs of Detroit. Christina Hall wrote that counterfeit automotive parts pour into the U.S. and can be a direct risk to safety. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Happiness fuels success, not the other way around.